Well, the 2024 presidential election results will be certified on Capitol Hill on January 6, 2025. Interestingly enough, we just learned that is always going to be the date. It's enshrined in the Electoral Reform Act. Now, this cycle, we saw some long lines at the polls, bomb threats causing evacuations, mail-in ballot boxes being targeted. Might all of these factors or legal challenges further complicate the final certification?
That is the question, a great question at that. For more analysis, I want to bring in Hofstra Law School Professor James Sample and former Pennsylvania Secretary of State Kathy Boockvar. So let's start with you, James. Might we see any legal challenges in this election as it stands right now that might draw out the certification process as we move forward in the next several months here?
I don't think we will. I think we've already seen numerous lawsuits and election-related challenges. In fact, amazingly, because the timeline for challenging the results of an election has moved up so far that we're now challenging results even before they happen, 2024 has already witnessed more election-related lawsuits than 2020 did, which is going to go down, of course, as the historic moment for lawsuit election challenges, short of Bush v. Gore, but certainly in terms of volume. There actually have already been more lawsuits. Now, many of those lawsuits were essentially press releases or lawsuits parading as press releases or vice versa, depending on how you want to look at it. But they were moving up the game. They were moving up the timeline. They sort of professionalized the operation that was kind of amateur hour in 2020, and then they didn't need them.
Kathy, let's talk about your state of Pennsylvania. There were some challenges that arose, particularly, obviously, that challenge to the voters' mail-in ballot applications at kind of the last moment there. How do you see any of these challenges playing out in the future? As James says, now that it seems like we have a decisive victory, do you expect that that will all go away?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's one of those million-dollar questions, right? I think we will probably see less of it pursued because the people who were actually bringing those challenges won most of the elections, right? So I think the motivation is different than it was. However, I think we will see that that most of that litigation will at least have some answer from the courts, which I think is really important because, frankly, it was groundless, and the courts have been throwing out those challenges, the ones that you're referring to again and again. The boards of elections have been throwing them out, and I think each cycle, to James's point, that we have this litigation, we sort of get rid of a range of these groundless, baseless challenges.
And we did see some of the election officials and state officials there in Pennsylvania say, on election day, if you have a problem, report it right now. We don't want to hear about it after the fact. But James, let's talk a little bit more about the voting system in the United States, because all of these challenges, whether they are they have grounds or don't, or are just PR releases, as you said, all of them have weakened the perception of our ability to believe in our democratic process. Do we still have the safeguards that we need? But more importantly than that, in some way, can the American public believe in those safeguards? What happens if we don't?
Well, I think I'll take the second half of your question first, because I think actually that's really the core issue. I think the reality is our elections were safe and secure in 2020, and they've been safe and secure in 2024. We have a messaging problem and a megaphone problem. The saturation of the message that there's voter fraud, the saturation of the message that there's cheating, the saturation of the message that undocumented immigrants are voting in our elections.
And all of those lies perpetuated by, in many cases, foreign actors working through misinformation on social media.
Absolutely, and domestic actors too. I mean, there's definitely an entity within the United States, or entities, with a message that wants to dissuade people from voting, that wants to suppress voters, and that wants there not to be faith in the system. We have kind of a heads I win, tails you lose dynamic. If elections are only deemed reliable by the winner, we have a real problem. The scoreboard operators, like the secretary here, are individuals of integrity and intelligence who do their jobs and who have done their jobs historically well. That was true in 2020. It's true this time. And that's true regardless of who wins.
And Kathy, speaking of election integrity, we saw billionaire Elon Musk with his election sweepstakes on Twitter, online, on social media, kind of testing the limits of what is allowed in elections and election law for the most part. What do you take, or what is your thoughts on a billionaire stepping into the election cycle in the manner that he chose to here?
Yeah, well, I think James hit it on the head, honestly, because there's been a very intentional effort to tear down faith in our country. And Elon Musk used his megaphone to do that, right? There's been a very deliberate attempt to spread conspiracy theories and disinformation. And this has now been going on for 4 straight years. And it's caused lasting damage. And I want to say, though, before we move on to anything else, I want to say what really happened yesterday is a demonstration of the heroes of our democracy, our election officials, because they were hit again and again and again. We dealt with disinformation, conspiracy theories, bomb threats, record challenges, record litigation. And look how successful this election was. I mean, you know, across the country, we saw record voter participation, and that is thanks to our local election officials who were resilient, who responded quickly, and made sure every one of us could exercise our fundamental right to vote.
I couldn't say it better myself. It was shocking last night as you're watching those results come in, and there are no problems. There's no issues. Small ones, but
right.
nothing
I mean,
that's
the bomb
down.
threats,
In
not
Georgia,
so small,
yeah,
but
all over the place. Yeah.
Also just thanking those poll workers who
Right.
do not get paid much and have been the targets of harassment.
Absolutely.
James, just in the very final moments we have, there were several measures on the ballots to protect abortion rights in several states. Do you expect that the Trump presidency is going to have any impact on abortion in this country?
I think the Trump administration version 1 has already had a massive impact. I mean, the reality is that it's likely that Clarence Thomas and Samuel Alito will step down during the Trump administration 2.0. And what that likely means is that the Dobbs ruling, among many other very conservative, in many respects beyond the pale rulings, including the presidential immunity ruling, are going to be enshrined for a generation. Because when you replace 2 of the arch conservatives with their 40-year-old analogs, you're going to be locking in some very, very extreme jurisprudence for a very long time.
And there were several Supreme Court appointments, lower court appointments during the last Trump presidency, and more to come. James Sample, Kathy Boockvar, thank you both.
Thanks for having us.